Does what? He cried eagerly. Mary was so anxious that she got up from her stool and came to him and caught hold of both his hands. Can I trust you? I trusted Dickon because birds trusted him. Can I trust you for sure, she implored. Her face was so solemn that he almost whispered his answer. Yes. Yes. Well, Dickon will come to see you tomorrow morning, and he'll bring his creatures with him. Oh! Oh! Colin cried out in delight. But that's not all, Mary went on, almost pale with solemn excitement. The rest is better. There is a door into the garden. I found it. It is under the ivy on the wall. If he had been a strong, healthy boy, Colin would probably have shouted, "Hooray! Hooray!" But he was weak and rather hysterical. His eyes grew bigger and bigger, and he gasped for breath. Oh, Mary! He cried out with a half-sob. Shall I see it? Shall I get into it? Shall I live to get into it? And he clutched her hands and dragged her toward him. Of course you'll see it, snapped Mary indignantly. Of course you'll live to get into it. Don't be silly. And she was so unhysterical and natural and childish that she brought him to his senses, and he began to laugh at himself, and a few minutes afterward she was sitting on her stool again, telling him not what she imagined the secret garden to be like, but what it really was like. And Colin's aches and tiredness were forgotten, and he was listening enraptured. It is just what you thought it would be, he said at last. It sounds just as if you had really seen it. You know I said that when you told me first. Mary hesitated about 2 minutes, and then boldly spoke the truth. I had seen it, and I had been in, she said. I found the key and got in weeks ago, but I daren't tell you. I daren't because I was so afraid I couldn't trust you, for sure. Chapter 19. It has come. Of course, Dr. Craven had been sent for the morning after Colin had had his tantrum. He was always sent for at once when such a thing occurred, and he always found, when he arrived, a white shaken boy lying on his bed, sulky and so hysterical that he was ready to break into fresh sobbing at least the word. In fact, Dr. Craven dreaded and detested the difficulties of these visits. On this occasion, he was away from Misselthwaite Manor until afternoon. How is he? He asked Mrs. Medlock rather irritably when he arrived. He will break a blood vessel in one of those fits some day. The boy is half insane with hysteria and self-indulgence. Well, sir, answered Mrs. Medlock, you'll scarcely believe your eyes when you see him. That plain, sour-faced child that's almost as bad as himself has just bewitched him. How she's done it, there's no telling. The Lord knows she's nothing to look at, and you scarcely ever hear her speak, but she did what none of us dare do. She just flew at him like a little cat last night, and stamped her feet and ordered him to stop screaming, and somehow she startled him so that he actually did stop. And this afternoon, well, just come up and see, sir. It's past crediting. The scene which Dr. Craven beheld when he entered his patient's room was indeed rather astonishing to him. As Mrs. Medlock opened the door, he heard laughing and chattering. Colin was on his sofa in his dressing gown, and he was sitting up quite straight, looking at a picture in one of the garden books, and talking to the plain child, who at that moment could scarcely be called plain at all because her face was so glowing with enjoyment. "Those long spires of blue ones, we'll have a lot of those," Colin was announcing. "They're called delphiniums. Dickens says they're larkspurs made big and grand," cried Mistress Mary. "There are clumps there already." Then they saw Dr. Craven and stopped. Mary became quite still, and Colin looked fretful. "I'm sorry to hear you were ill last night, my boy." "I'm better now, much better," Colin answered, rather like a Rajah. "I'm going out in my chair in a day or two, if it is fine. I want some fresh air." Dr. Craven sat down by him and felt his pulse and looked at him curiously. "It must be a very fine day," he said, "and you must be very careful not to tire yourself." "Fresh air won't tire me," said the young Rajah. As there had been occasions when this same young gentleman had shrieked aloud with rage and had insisted that fresh air would give him cold and kill him, it is not to be wondered at that his doctor felt somewhat startled. "I thought you said you did not like fresh air," he said. "I don't, when I'm by myself," replied the Rajah. "But my cousin is going out with me." "And the nurse, of course," suggested Dr. Craven. "No, I will not have the nurse," so magnificently that Mary could not help remembering how the young native prince had looked with his diamonds and emeralds and pearls stuck all over him and the great rubies on the small dark hand he had waved to command his servants to approach with salams and receive his orders. "My cousin knows how to take care of me. I am always better when she is with me. She made me better last night. A very strong boy I know will push my carriage." Dr. Craven felt rather alarmed. If this tiresome, hysterical boy should chance to get well, he himself would lose all chance of inheriting Misselthwaite. But he was not an unscrupulous man, though he was a weak one, but he did not intend to let him run into actual danger. "He must be a strong boy, and a steady boy," he said, "and I must know something about him. Who is he? What is his name?" "It's Dickon," Mary spoke up suddenly. She felt somehow that everybody who knew the moor must know Dickon. And she was right, too. She saw that in a moment Dr. Craven's serious face relaxed into a relieved smile.